I'm going to tell you about 3 thought experiments, which are the Turing test, the Chinese room, and the billion-year-old robot. First thought experiment, Turing test. Let's talk about the first one, the Turing test. Many years ago, Alan Turing, the father of modern computing, developed the basic concept of the Turing machine, the computer. And he knew that the beast was about to come out of the cage. The Turing machine itself is just a thought experiment. What is a thought experiment? The way scientists understand the world is mainly to observe and do experiments. And thought experiments can't be experimented in reality. Just use your imagination to construct experiments. The Turing machine is one such imaginary abstract computer model. But today's most complex computers are still no more than the theoretical capabilities of Turing, machines that were originally written on paper. The next question for Turing's thinking: how intelligent can machines achieve? He also constructed a thought experiment, the ultimate test of machine intelligence, the Turing test. Imagine a scenario where a human communicates with another person, isolated from each other. And the other person is a black box to the human, and you know nothing about him. Communication takes place only through keyboard screen, where humans enter through the keyboard and the other party responds through the screen. If humans cannot tell whether the other party is a human or a machine through communication, then it can be said that the machine has passed the test and possesses human equivalent intelligence. Turing himself was concerned only with whether machines were thinking. He was not concerned with whether machines could acquire intentionality, consciousness, or even will like humans. But philosophers cared about these. Not only philosophers, but ordinary people too. Everyone is concerned about whether the machine will acquire intention, consciousness, and will. Once the machine obtains these things, the good life of human beings on Earth will be over. Moreover, humans themselves do not quite understand their own intention, consciousness, and will, and want to find leads to understanding ourselves by comparing with machine intelligence. Intentionality is the ability of the mind to be present, to express, to represent things. Consciousness is knowing the self. And will is choosing. Since Turing didn't care, philosophers kidnapped the Turing test. They believe that an intelligence equivalent to a human being should contain the contents of intention, consciousness, and will. Without them, where would cognition come from? Without self-knowledge, without self-determination, what wisdom? The famous philosopher John Searle calls machine intelligence with intention, consciousness, and will strong artificial intelligence strong AI, while machine intelligence without these can only calculate, infer, and solve specific problems is called weak artificial intelligence, weak AI. The strong artificial intelligence and weak artificial intelligence that you can hear today are the categories that began with a philosopher. On the basis of the Turing test, philosophers have raised new questions. Assuming that the machine has passed the Turing test, has it acquired intention, consciousness, will, and strong artificial intelligence? This question cannot be answered directly. To this day, no machine has passed the Turing test, and no machine has obtained strong artificial intelligence. All existing artificial intelligence is weak artificial intelligence. Even if alpha coefficient Go crushes human Go players like this, it is also weak artificial intelligence. So in reality, it is impossible to test whether the machine can obtain strong artificial intelligence. But the inability to test this in reality did not stumble philosophers. The second thought experiment, the Chinese room. Turing is not the only one who can do thought experiments. In fact, philosophers are the originators of thought experiments. Since Plato, thought experiments have been their main thought tool. The philosopher Thiel constructed an ingenious thought experiment, a variation of the Turing test, called the Chinese room. The subtlety of the Chinese room is that Searle himself acts as the machine being tested in the Turing test. And he knows for sure that his machine has no human intelligence, so the problem is solved. The details are as follows. Imagine a room with a person, Searle himself, a stack of paper, a pen, and a comparison table between Chinese and English. The man slipped a note through the crack of the door with a question in Chinese. Searle used the comparison table to find out the corresponding English question, gave the English answer, and then used the comparison table to find out the corresponding Chinese, and copied it on the note and stuffed it back into the crack of the door. The answer was flawless. The people outside the house couldn't tell if it was a human or a machine. So the Turing test passed. The whole process of responding to the conversation through the note, both inside and outside the room, was perfect. But there was no such thing as understanding. Searle himself did not understand Chinese at all. By replacing himself with the role of a robot, Searle saw the heart of the robot. At the end of the test, he traveled back and resumed his identity as a philosopher, telling everyone that the machine that passed the Turing test was actually not intelligent, because he was the machine himself. He knew for sure that he did not understand Chinese, and that nothing else in the room, paper, pens, comparison tables, had understanding. There was no understanding in the Chinese room, only pure computation. Searle believes that without understanding, there is no intention, no real thinking, no consciousness, no will. These layers of progressive advanced human intelligence. He announced that the Chinese room thought experiment shows that even if it passes the Turing test, the machine is still a machine. And it will not have the same intelligence as human beings. At most it is just seeming. Strong artificial intelligence cannot be achieved by calculation alone. It depends on a special mechanism that the brain has not yet uncovered. The Searle Chinese room has become the most discussed thought experiment of our time. Here's the essence of it. Philosophers first added a strong artificial intelligence target to the Turing test and then announced that they had defeated it. It's not quite fair, but there is a general sigh of relief that people don't want to see machines become superior to humans. As for me, I think he was happy too early. Another thought experiment. The third thought experiment, billion-year-old robots. If you want to see the Earth 100 million years from now, the only way you can imagine it now is to go into hibernation. You climb into a hibernation pod and wake up 100 million years later. However, the problem was not that simple. The hibernation pod needed to withstand 100 million years of testing, ensure continuous energy supply, and withstand environmental disasters in case of damage. It had to repair itself. You find the ideal location, have all the resources you need to maintain the hibernation pod, and fix it there. Is that okay? This was not a good idea. In 100 million years, earthquakes, tsunamis, and meteorites had hit the Earth. In such a long period of time, it was impossible to reliably predict how the risk would come. Things that happened once in 1,000 years happened every day. The future cannot be predicted, so what should we do? Build a robot that can sense the environment, avoid risks, and find resources, and put the hibernation pod in it. At this point, you should understand. Immobility and mobility are two strategies copied from nature. The former is a plant strategy, and the latter is an animal strategy. Asking the machine to choose its moment, you give it the command to keep me alive from the beginning. And then it sleeps for 100 million years without giving it on-the-spot guidance. Your robot must be able to strategize on its own, know how to find resources, how to move to safety, how to anticipate and avoid danger. You can't think of all of these in advance, and even if you think of some of them, you can't prepare everything in advance. You can't afford to prepare. The resources required are too many, too cumbersome, and you can't adapt to changes in the environment. The challenges don't stop there. In the next 100 million years, it won't be just your robot. There may be many robots competing and cooperating with each other. Your robot has to have the ability to combine vertically and horizontally, and the needs are nested layer by layer. If your robot eventually lives up to its mission and saves you for 100 million years, then it will probably develop the ability to run on its own. You are in hibernation and cannot control it in real time. Under the ultimate goal of saving your life, the robot will generate many goals on its own according to changes in the environment. This is a big deal. Derivation means detachment from the original goal. Don't forget the original intention, how difficult it is. Allow the machine to have the autonomy of camera decision-making. Then the process of autonomous decision making will definitely exceed your expectations, which is called out of control. To thought experiments for TAT. At this point, you should understand a little more. The robots in this story are humans themselves. In evolution, genes created humans to be their robots to protect them from long dormancy deep in the human body. Humans are robots created by genes for their own immortality. But in the autonomous decision-making space that genes have to seed, humans have evolved free will. Our interests as human beings and the interests of the creator gene have taken a fork in the road. From the day when genes had to give human beings the ability to learn and authorize autonomous decision-making, genes were out of control and human beings became self-reliant, which became a doomed outcome. A word wakes up the dreamer. Since people are originally machines, why can't machines be people? The billion-year-old robot is a thought experiment from intuition pumps and other tools for thinking by Daniel Dennett. Dennett is a modern science popularizer of evolution theory and the most scientist-like philosopher. In the great debate between machine intelligence and human intelligence, his views go head-to-head with Searle, the philosopher who proposed the Chinese house. He believes that there is no need for any mysterious special mechanism of the brain, and the operation is nested layer by layer, which is enough to emerge with human intelligence, because human intelligence is nothing more than that. In Searle's Chinese room, Searle, the person, the paper, the pen, the comparison table, does not understand Chinese. But that's okay, understanding emerges from the whole of all these things. Searle and Dennett, for TAT, can't say which view is right now. Where there is data, the data speaks. Where there is no data, the story speaks. There is no data now, you can only see which thought experiment you like more. One personally prefer Dennett, and highly recommend the book Intuition Pump and other thinking tools. The term intuition pump was coined by Dennett for thought experiments, which means that where there is no evidence or data, we start with our accepted intuition and do thought experiments to see where it takes us. Dennett first coined the term intuition pump, and it was precisely from criticizing Searle's Chinese room thought experiment. Summary of this lecture. To sum up, the question we are discussing today is how thinking emerges. I took you to experience 3 classic thought experiments: Turing test, Chinese room, and billion years robot. And the last thought experiment, which I especially want you to remember, is from the book Intuition Pumps and Other Tools for Thinking. It's also the inspiration for our thinking training today, and this book has dozens of ingenious thought experiments and thinking tools. I recommend this book to you, Thinking Today. I have a question for you today. Do you think robots will gain the intelligence of the human brain? The 2 thought experiments we talked about today, the Chinese house and the billion-year-old robot, they came to the opposite conclusion. Which one do you prefer? You are welcome to leave a message in the message area. Share your insights with me. And also welcome to share today's content with your friends and discuss with him. In the next lesson, we will discuss a lesson that will teach you how not to be hurt by the impermanence of fate.